So good to see you.
How are you?
Good. Look at all these oysters.
We're excited to try these with all the bottles that we've picked out for today.
All of this deliciousness. For today's tasting, I've selected a range of sakes with very different flavor profiles. It's totally fine if all four of us quietly taste the same sake and have completely different tasting notes. I hope you've got a lot of oysters for all the pairings I want to try.
Starting on the top left, we have Wellfleet. I figure since we're in New York, it's very classic. We're most used to that. It's a bit briny. Below that is Duxbury Bay. Same vein, pretty briny as well. Top center, Shipwreck from Prince Edward Island. Below that is De Boulogne from Maine. This one is, I think, the most distinctive out of the set. Super minerally. When you chew it more, it's much more vegetal flavors as well. My favorite of the set is the Kushi from Vancouver Islands. As in traditional West Coast oysters, it's much more melony, a bit sweet, which is super nice with sake also. And then finally, Salt Nugget. And as its name implies, it's much more on the salty side. And then we also have these grilled oysters. I decided to grill these because heating it up kind of changes the flavor. You're essentially making almost an oyster broth in itself.
Yum.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see what kind of combinations you guys can come up with.
Can I pour you some sake?
Please. What are we starting with?
Mirai Family Tanrei Junmai from Aomori Prefecture. The tasting notes are sandalwood, steamed rice, and cream.
It smells like rice.
I think wine drinkers feel so dumb saying something smells like grapes when they're drinking wine, but that cereal or rice note is something that you really kind of have to talk about with every sake. But this one, it really stands out.
I think the temperature is great too,
Yeah.
for this.
The room temperature, it's great for this one. Let's try some oysters.
There's a bit more minerality than I expected. The sake is really kind of tempering that and giving it a nice, like, smooth blanket.
Yeah, there's something so pillowy about that sake that it kind of encases the oyster in a really nice way.
The word pillowy is so interesting. Like, have you heard like a wine person use the word pillowy? The sake is amazing on its own, but combined together, it brings out kind of the sweetness I think that that oyster has.
Should we try another sake? Dewa Zakura Omachi Junmai Ginjo from Yamagata Prefecture. Juicy blackberry, kombu seaweed, grapefruit.
So different than the rest.
Yeah, it's a little bit more like subtle.
Yeah.
A little bit more earthy.
Omachi, definitely a rice known for being more smoky and kind of seaweedy.
That umami. Kind of any ingredient that highlights that rich flavor.
No, definitely. It's that extra, like, if you like, some people can't describe it, but for me, it's like, oh, I want to eat more of that.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to go into riskier territory, and I'm really excited to try this bouillon.
Pretty big one.
Yeah, they're big and they're kind of metallic.
Definitely the hardest one to shuck as well. I was going to say that.
I think wine can be great with oysters, but the level of iron in wine and champagne can create more metallic with some oysters. And since Japanese sake, there's no iron in the water in Japan, I feel like you automatically avoid that risk with an oyster like this.
That was a mouthful.
It's a good slurp.
So much going on in that oyster, though. Wow.
Obviously, it's so rich. But the moment I kind of smell the sake, it just like brought everything together and just kind of created this like umami bomb.
Oysters have so much of it, and when you combine it with sake that has different umami, it exponentially increases. And so you're just turning up the volume on the umami so much, which I don't think you can really do with another alcoholic beverage.
Turning up the volume. No, you really can't.
Should we pour another sake for this? Shirakabegura Kimoto Junmai from Kyoto Prefecture. White mushroom, white pepper, cedar.
Ladies first. Kimoto is one of my personally favorite kind of styles. I absolutely love recommending this style to kind of bold red wine drinkers because I think people think of sake as like a white wine lover. But I totally disagree. I think there is a sake out there for everybody, whether you love whiskey, you love red wine.
All right, let's see what direction we're all going in with our oysters.
I'm so intrigued by all the toppings and I want to try them all.
I'm excited about the olive oil. I haven't had olive oil on an oyster yet. I will have to say it was not as good as I expected. It kind of overwhelmed the oyster to me.
If I had a choice, I would actually serve you guys no condiments. I think the oysters by themselves are beautiful, especially with the sake. It helps me kind of figure out their flavors and the flavor of the sake and how well they pair.
We should do the josen next. Josen aged Junmai Ginjo from Niigata Prefecture. Yellow peach, Asian pear, white flowers. This has been aged for a year.
Oh, chef.
I was like, I haven't done this yet. I feel bad.
Thank you.
It's very delicate
Yeah.
to me. Or like a pina colada.
Such an interesting way to describe.
Yeah, I think the aging really pays off on the palate.
Do you think aging is actually good or bad?
I think some people think you have to be so precious about sake.
It really just depends on, does it taste good to you? Definitely at home, I have bottles open that are, you know, months and maybe going on a year or so. But I think that's the exciting part, is that the sake will change a little bit, and it's great to just see where that journey goes.
All of us had a different experience, and yet we still totally loved it. And that's why, you know, palate is totally subjective.
I know Jess always talks about unlocking your palate, but that is that combination of umami-rich food with umami-rich sake, creating this new flavor. You guys, this was incredible. I can't thank you enough for this experience.
It's so nice to share a table with you all. I mean, you can't really go wrong with sake and oysters. Kanpai!
Bye.